talking about a 4-year-old child. She was innocence personified. There was no reason why this kid should have been afflicted in this way. And he was called by Christ to do these things.
So Hostage to the Devil is a story about a former Irish Jesuit priest who became one of the notorious underground exorcists in the east coast of America from the 70s through to the late 90s. It was controversial to many, but he was also I would say, a spiritual director to others as well. So he's very conflicting views about the man, and I found him extremely fascinating. One of my initial feelings when I was brought on board the project was, how come nothing's been made about the man before?
We did not talk an awful lot about his exorcisms, except the last one. I kept asking him not to do it, and he kept saying, well, I'm only going to be an assistant. Not much chance of that.
Father Malachi Martin was born in Kerry. He became an Irish Jesuit priest, knew 12 languages, went to work on the Dead Sea Scrolls in the Syrian Peninsula, worked at the Vatican for a long time, very traditional Catholic in his views and his beliefs. And then Vatican II happened, the Second Vatican Council happened, when they were trying to modernize the Catholic faith, modernize the religion to get with the people of that time in the 60s. As a result of the Vatican II, thousands of nuns and priests left in droves. They were disillusioned, but Father Martin was one of those priests that left the Vatican during the early 60s and arrived in America and started to, on the East Coast, and arrived in Manhattan of all places, and started to wash dishes, became a taxi driver, and then he started to write and found a natural transition into being a writer, and started to write about the Catholic faith, but also started to write about exorcism and demonic possession.
I never saw an ego, and I was driving with him, and I said to him, Father, I want to attain your holiness. And he said to me, he said, I'm a wretched pig in the eyes of God. And I almost crashed the car because I'm like, if you're a wretched pig, then I'm finished. I'm not even, there's no way I'm attaining heaven, you know? I know this for a fact.
Keeping the balance about the man was extremely difficult for me, purely because I obviously found a lot of believers and disciples of the man, but trying to find the critics that were willing to come on camera, critics who had met the man in person, was from day one quite a difficult task.
I became a good detective, as I was in fact a good correspondent for Time magazine, and I got to the bottom of everything. He had all these stories, some of which even turned out to be true.
To research exorcism was fascinating because I grew up with The Exorcist and The Omen and all these sort of possessions films, sensational films, and I was just excited about the prospect of going to Rome and interviewing Catholic priest exorcists in Rome, going to the Vatican University where they did the courses every year, the exorcism courses, etc. And I was all excited. And at the end of it, it was a conclusion that exorcism is quite boring. It's quite mundane. It's a mundane process. One exorcist in Rome told me that he'd seen one manifestation in 20 years of being an exorcist, and I was like, wow. And it was a levitation. It was a case of a child levitating during the rite itself, and that was one manifestation in 20 years of being an exorcist.
All of these are my notes from what this is all about. Sometimes it's difficult, but most of the times you know, because of the way the person behaves, you know they're not mentally ill. There's something else. And a good exorcist and a good investigator will get to the bottom of that. It might take time, but it can be done.
The big question in that film is, does this man tell the truth? Does Father Malachi Martin tell the truth? And that's the big question in the film. Does he tell the truth, or is he a sociopath? Is he just off the radar?